On this episode of the Naturist Living Show, an interview with Morley Schloss.
This episode of the Naturist Living Show is brought to you by Bear Oaks Family Naturist Park. At Bear Oaks, we offer traditional naturist values in a modern setting. Free your body, free your mind. www.bearoaks.ca.
Welcome to this latest episode of the Naturist Living Show. My name is Stéphane. I'm your host for this show and this episode of the Naturist Living Show, and I'm also the owner of Bear Oaks Family Naturist Park. It's been a wonderful summer. This summer has been unusually hot. We've been setting all kinds of record temperature, lots of sunshine, yet plenty of rain. But rain tends to be during the week or at night and not all the time, unlike the last 2 years. So everything's green, yet we don't feel like we're missing out on the heat and the sun this year. And I was at Bear Oaks and in the middle of the week this week, and it was really a pleasure to just stroll around and see how things have grown. We've got about over 4 times, I think, our membership from 4 years. We had over 700 new visitors this year alone, and the year's not over yet. And it was great. It was the middle of the week, yet there was lots of people still around playing, enjoying themselves. Kids were running around, giggling, laughing, squealing. There was a couple of women sitting around with a guitar, playing some songs and singing. People were in the lake, people were in the pond, people were on the deck having a drink and a chat. And everybody, of course, was very comfortable in their own skin. And that's really why I do this. I'm hoping to turn it into a profitable business, and it should be. And by the way, I think that's very important. Naturist clubs, resorts, parks, or whatever you want to call them, need to be profitable businesses, because if they're not, then they won't survive. They will be relying on the goodwill of people who are dedicated, but then when those people move on, there'll be nobody to continue the job. There'll be nobody to take over the business. There'll be nobody interested in starting new naturist businesses because it's not profitable. It should be profitable. There's no reason. That's the kind of world we live in, where things have to make a profit so that everyone can earn a living. I'm often asked, particularly when I'm doing media interviews, how I first got involved in naturism. And, it's an interesting story, and I'll try not to make it too long of a story, but, in the early to mid-'80s, I was in high school and university, and we did a lot of skinny dipping. When I first discovered skinny dipping, I really enjoyed it. It was always at night, of course. It tended to be in mixed company because we were a bunch of high school kids, and we were doing it together after, we were camping or at friends' cottages. And I always enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it enough that I became sort of the instigator. I was always the one going, let's go. And people started teasing me that I was the nudist. But the real watershed moment, I remember clearly, actually. It was, my girlfriend at the time, her name was Laura, and Laura and I were good friends with Margaret and Steve, and we were at their cottage. And we decided to go to a lake that was very quiet and had a nice sandy beach, so we canoed our way over. And then we hiked a little trail, and we ended up on this private beach. We were the only ones there, and the lake basically had no cottages. It was a very private lake. And we'd brought a lunch, and we were just enjoying ourselves. But, being the older teens or young adults, however you want to define us, we were all heavy in the hormones, and Steve and Marg were up on the rock necking. And so Laura and I thought we'd see if we could get their attention. So for whatever reason, we whipped off our bathing suit and ran screaming into the water. And so they looked at us and thought, oh, that must be the theme for the day. And so they did the same. And then something happened which I didn't expect. We spent the rest of the day in broad daylight without our bathing suits on. It was incredible. I mean, I remember the feeling very well. I remember being amazed at how, comfortable it was, and how, well, I was going to say how it's not sexual, but it wasn't sexual. But I can't say there was no sexuality. We were young and full of hormones, and we had girlfriends, and obviously there was an element of sexuality in everything that we did in our lives. But I don't think it was any more sexually charged than before we took the bathing suits off. That's just who we were at that age. And but in fact, I remember that it wasn't sexual. That suddenly I didn't feel like I was in some Playboy fantasy or something. It was very natural and very normal. And we spent the rest of the day, we were fishing. Steve and I sat around, chatted. Laura and Mark sat around, chatted. We had lunch. It was very normal and very comfortable. And that's a real watershed moment, because from that time is when I started looking into naturism, trying to find out more. And you've got to remember that this was in the early, mid-'80s. There was no internet. Well, there wasn't the internet, technically speaking. It was limited to scientists and academics in the military, of course. But to find information was much, much harder than today. I mean, I looked in the library. There was very little. There was some very old information that was really out of date. I looked in the yellow pages and I couldn't find anything there either. And strangely enough, it was actually through the internet. A friend of mine who's Richard is very, very into technology and was at the time, a real propeller head. And he connected me onto the internet for the first time. And I think that was in 87 or 88, first internet email address. And I found news groups. News groups predated the web. Before the web, there were news groups. There was email still, but there was no web. But on news groups, which still exist today, but unlike today, are not full of spam and ads for penis enlargements and things like that. They were serious about the topics, and there was one called Rec Nude. So I went on Rec Nude and I posted the question, where do you go in Canada? And somebody responded with the mailing address for the Federation of Canadian Naturists. So I wrote them a letter, because that's how we communicated. At that time, there was no phone number. And I mailed it. And I don't know, a few weeks later, I got a letter back giving me the name and address of the clubs in the Toronto area. And I still didn't do very much with that information at that point. I was very aware from reading magazines. I had found HNE, which, yes, I will admit, HNE is not the most perfect imagery for what naturism is about. It's a little on the girly mag angle. There's no question. It always has been. It used to be worse, actually. But it was a magazine that was readily accessible in stores, on the bookshelves, on the magazine racks, albeit in the adult section. So it was a little embarrassing to purchase, but I bought those and I learned from that. But anyway, I knew from that single men aren't always welcome, that it's difficult for single men to go. And at one point I was single. Laura and I broke up after a number of years. And but I had a friend, Erica, and Erica and I used to go out. When it was a really nice day, I'd call in sick. I hope my employer's not listening to that from way long ago, but that's what I was doing. When we saw good weather coming, we'd call in sick, and she was able to take a day off, and we'd go to a beach somewhere. So one day I pulled up to Erica's house, and she jumped in. We'd planned to go out. I always picked the beach for some reason, and she said, "Where are we going today?" So I said, "Well, do you feel adventurous?" And she said, "Sure. What do you mean?" She said, "Well, do you want to go to a nude beach?" I said very nervously. And she said, much to my surprise, she said, "Sure." So there I was. I didn't really expect a yes answer, but she said yes. So off we went. I had the directions. I was prepared, even if I didn't expect to be going. And so we drove up to Glen Echo Park. And we drove all the way up. I was very nervous the entire time. Very nervous. Didn't know what to expect. We got there. It was middle of the week, so there was almost nobody there, but it was a beautiful place. Sunny day, hot, because of course we only took those days off. Beautiful lawns and forest and a lake, but we checked in to the clubhouse. We we registered and we paid our fees. We got a bit of a lecture because that's what the owner intended to do at the time. And then we went and sat down on the lawn. And we both sat down fully clothed on our towels. And I'm sitting there going, God, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And then Erica just goes, well, we didn't come here to keep our clothes on. And her clothes are off and she's laying down. And here I am, fully dressed man, sitting on a towel next to a fully nude woman laying in the sun. So I decided I better go for it. So I did. And, people always say that, it's easier for men, but it obviously wasn't for me. And, but I did, and I was very comfortable. And there was yet one big step, which was when I finally stood up to walk around. And wow, what a feeling of both breaking a very big social taboo and an incredible feeling of freedom. And, well, obviously, you can tell where that went from there. Pretty far away. So there are several people in my life that are very responsible for who I am today. And I guess I should thank them for that, because it's a wonderful thing that we do. And I love, obviously, naturism. I've invested a lot of time and money and a lot of my life in being a naturist. But all that to tell you that also, when I was doing a lot of research at that time, one name came up several times in a lot of articles and newspaper things that I read, and that was Morley Schloss. Because it was also the time of top freedom. Morley was very involved in naturism in New York State, which is not far from Toronto, and Rochester, actually, area, upper New York State, which is very close to Ontario. And I had read several times about how the group was having swims in the basement of his house. He had actually built a small indoor pool in the basement of his house where they could gather in the winter. And he was also involved with his wife in Topfree issues. And in 1986, they were having Topfree picnics, and they were arrested, which resulted in a key ruling by the courts in 92 about women having the right to be Topfree in New York State. And around that time, 91, was the very famous case in Ontario where Gwen Jacobs was acquitted for being Topfree in Guelph, which gave women in Ontario the right to be Topfree and potentially in the rest of Canada as well. So, but Morley's name was tied to all these articles. Obviously, Topfree is about women, and it's about equality, and it's not necessarily about naturism, but obviously the body acceptance issues and top freedom are closely related. And while Morley is a man, he was very involved, and his name was showing up in a lot of the articles because he was already a leader in the community. And as the line goes, Morley's famous because he took his clothes off for the first time in 1969 at Woodstock and hasn't put them on since. And so what follows is my discussion with Morley Schloss. I actually first heard your name probably back in the 80s. I think you were having, there was something in a magazine or something that I read, you were having maybe swims in the basement of your house. Is that right?
That's true. In Rochester, New York, there's a group called Naturist Rochester. It's one of, or maybe the oldest non-landed clubs in the United States that is not associated with the beach. And I put in a swimming pool and a hot tub and a sauna in the basement to get through the cold winters in Rochester. And it gradually evolved into a club open at least a couple nights a week for people in the area to come over and use. And it still exists and is still being used, although I'm not in Rochester very much because I live at Sunsport Gardens in Florida, and in Rochester very little, but other people live in the house and keep it open.
And when did you start that, the Rochester Naturists?
Well, it would have been in the 1970s. I don't have a particular date because it evolved. It evolved from people just using it before it became a formal group. It couldn't have been a chapter of the Naturist Society until 1980 because the Naturist Society didn't start till 1980.
Right. So how did you get involved in naturism?
Well, that's kind of interesting. My first experience was in August of 1969. And I, like thousands and thousands of other people, were at Woodstock. And it was muddy and rainy, and I was there with a 2-year-old and a 1-month-old. And anyway, I needed to get clean, and there was this pond behind the stage, and there were people skinny dipping, and I didn't have a bathing suit, so I tried it. I kind of was a little scared, but I tried it, and it was such an incredible feeling that I, feeling the air and water and sun over me, all over me, that I was hooked immediately. Went back to Rochester, New York, where I was living, and went to the library and looked up nudist parks and started visiting them. That was in 1969. In fact, I'm not sure exactly which one I went to first. I went to several, but I did go to some in Canada, which is interesting because it was just across the border. And back then it was easy to go back and forth across the border before passports and things. And I went to Lily Valley in Fort Erie. I went to TGS, Glen Echo, which unfortunately doesn't exist, I guess, now, in Toronto. I went to Ponderosa. I went to Four Seasons. Those are the Canadian ones, but then I went to many in the United States as well. I went to, in Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York State mostly to begin with. I can name them, but you're probably more interested in the Canadians. But I went to, there was another one I went to in Canada that existed that doesn't anymore. It wasn't too far from Lily Valley, and I've forgotten the name. It was
Sun Valley Gardens.
Sun Valley Gardens, yeah. I also had an interesting experience that summer. It was quite a life-changing summer. I was in Toronto and saw the original production of Hair with its nude scene in Toronto. And also I went to another play in Toronto at the same time called Dionysius in 69, which is I've never heard of since, but it was a play in a black box theater where the audience sat around the stage, and in the middle of it, it was a classic battle between the Dionysians and the conservative repressors. And they got into and the Dionysians invited the audience to come join them, and I got nude and went down and joined the cast who was getting nude, and all of a sudden it turned into a kind of war with red paint being splattered around, and I got covered and got to shower with the cast afterwards behind after the play was over. So there are quite a few interesting things that happened in the first years. Canada was I was very much involved in Canada.
Interesting. So you were one of the people that was actually at Woodstock, not just one of the ones who claim being at Woodstock.
No, I was really there, although I haven't seen myself in the movie.
I was going to ask you because there's a well-known scene in that documentary about swimming nude in that pond, and I didn't know if you were one of the...
I didn't. I've seen the movie. I did not see myself.
Now, a lot of people went to Woodstock and were impacted by the music. You were impacted by swimming nude.
Yes, music too, but the music was, I had heard before me, it was pretty amazing music, but the thing that changed my life kind of was not the music, but was just the experience there of being nude with other people and how great it felt.
Well, sure, I agree, because that would be, if you've never done it before, the first time, that's a very powerful emotional experience because it's such a social taboo.
And what a place to do it,
Yes.
But by the way, I do think you said we hadn't met. I think we had. I think you and I have met, but I'm not sure. I came up to I've been very active in the Topfree Equality movement, and there was a group that Paul Rappaport was working with who were putting on a play north of his house at the university. And as a women putting on a play on Topfree Equality, and I came up to see it, and I thought you were there.
Oh, I think I was. Unfortunately, then we didn't get much of a chance to chat.
We didn't talk very much, but I do think I met you there.
So speaking of Topfree, the first time that I really saw you in the news was in 1986 with the Rochester Topfree 7.
Right. My former wife was one of the people involved. In fact, I wrote the drafts of the briefs in the lower courts. That was quite an experience, and that really changed things as well. It took 5 different trials before we finally won in New York's top court. And the meetings were all at my house. There'd be women riding their bicycles up Topfree to my porch, and we'd have planning meetings, and we actually had Topfree picnics every single summer. There are only arrests in 2 of the summers, though, 1986 and 1989. But we did have picnics, Topfree picnics in parks in the area every year. And we did other things like going to Seneca Falls to the National Women's Hall of Fame, and they had a Topfree play there on the grounds of on their grounds, the National Women's Rights Museum, and at Elizabeth Cady Stanton's house there. So we've been. I was involved with that, and that was a very exciting time, and we won. I was also interesting. I was involved in some of the first Canadian things with Gwen Jacobs, and we went to Canada, and she came here, and we had a protest before the laws in Ontario changed, before women won there, and that was we all went to Fort Erie, and we walked across the Peace Bridge to Buffalo, and when we got to the center, we all took our shirts off with the flags in the center of the Peace Bridge, and went and had a Topfree picnic in Buffalo, and before we returned. And that was a kind of symbolic, interesting thing. We all went through customs and United States Customs Topfree with no problem.
That's fantastic. Now, why do you think you won in New York? What was it that made that a successful challenge?
Well, we won because we put on a good case, and of course it makes sense. It's I believe it's a violation of the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution to require women but not men to wear tops. It's gender discrimination, and of course it violates equal protection of the law. But we brought in, and this we couldn't have done unless we kind of, my wife was pro se, the other women had attorneys, but she represented herself, which I don't recommend unless you have an attorney next to you, but we did. And we brought in all kind of expert witnesses. We brought in psychologists to put Barbie doll on the stand, most popular toy that, and talked about how she had unrealistic dimensions, that no woman could look like that without toppling over, and presented an image for an unattainable beauty ideal for girls. We had an anthropologist from the Margaret Mead Institute who talked about the importance of breastfeeding and requiring women to cover their breasts in public, discouraged breastfeeding even if breastfeeding was allowed. And we blew up some pictures from the swimsuit edition of Sports Illustrated and made big posters out of them, and they had the police come. And, those show, the New York law read you couldn't show any part of the breast below the top of the areola. And, of course, all these swimsuits on the cover and inside of Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition did just that. They showed lots of the breasts. And we had the police officers who made the arrests on the stand, and they said, "Oh, we wouldn't bother women like that." Well, then we read the law to them, and they got all confused and muddled up, and that helped. So there are a lot of things we did. We even had in the first trial in 1986, when the women were being arrested, one of the television stations covered it. Actually showed women's breasts while the women were being arrested, and they showed that on the 6 o'clock news. We subpoenaed the station manager. See, I'm not sure whether this was 1986 or 1989, but one of the trials. We subpoenaed the station manager, and we asked questions. Did you get any objections? No, we didn't get any. He answered that there were no letters objecting. There were no phone calls. There wasn't one single objection to showing women's breasts on the news. And then, so do you ever get objections? Yes, anytime we have anything on gay rights or abortion or anything like that, they get letters or phone calls. So he said, but you didn't get any when you showed women's breasts? No, not a one. So that talked about it not being disruptive to society to show women's breasts. So all of those kind of things that we brought into it made a difference, I think. We had a trial where we actually got into sociological and anthropological issues, psychological issues, and we got those admitted into the trial, so that helped to win. It was a pretty exciting time. Also, there were no complaints. I mean, there were, in the whole time, all the picnics we had, we never got a complaint. The police could not document one single complaint they'd received about any of the picnics we had in public park.
So you're part of the Naturist Action Committee, the Naturist Society.
I actually am the only founding member still on the Naturist Action Committee and the Naturist Education Foundation. I'm on the board of both of those, and that's something that is very important because it's the organization that best protects people's rights, at least in the United States and Canada too. I mean, we're working. Judy Williams is one of our board members, and I'm sure, as all your listeners are aware, is very, very active in Canada.
Yeah. So as a NAC, founding board member of NAC, and as a member still of NAC, and as very involved in the Rochester Topfree 7. What would you say, almost 25 years later, is the state of Topfree equality in New York and in the United States?
Well, in New York, it's still there, and women aren't using it very much. Occasionally, I will see women on a beach Topfree around Rochester and other places, or I've been to Central Park in New York and seen women Topfree, but it's not real common. I've even been shopping on the Rochester street with women who were Topfree, and we went into a swimming pool, a municipal swimming pool, a couple of years ago in Rochester with women with Topfree. But I'd say it's unusual. I mean, you don't see a lot of women Topfree in public areas still in New York, but they can be, which is important. The whole idea is it's women's choice. Not trying to get women to be Topfree. We're talking about the right to be Topfree. So that's there, but it's in other areas it's spreading rapidly too. I now live in Florida, where I own Sunsport Gardens, which is a naturist resort with very similar values to Bear Oaks, and all of Miami-Dade County, all the beaches are Topfree for women, and the beaches in Monroe County, which is the Florida Keys, are Topfree for women. And a lot of places, women are not being hassled for being Topfree. There's a popular misconception that it's illegal everywhere. It isn't. Most states in the United States, it's not illegal for women to be Topfree, although it can be in certain counties or cities or towns. You don't know where it's illegal and where it isn't, except in New York State, where there's a court decision which so that no town or county can pass an ordinance requiring women to wear shirts. But it's becoming more and more common and accepted. I believe it's a gradual process. We have a long way to go before we get to where Europe is.
The problem is, of course, social pressure is far more powerful than the law. And we, with the Naturist Festival, this was last few years, it's been held at Bare Oaks. We get a bus and we drive it nude down on the bus down to Hanlon's Point, which is the official nude beach in Toronto. And on the way back, some women decided we stay on the bus on the ferry because then we are not nude in public. But some women decide to wrap a towel around their waist and travel on the ferry top-free. And while nobody hassled them, the looks of disapproval or the leering they got was very discouraging to them.
That's too bad. I haven't experienced that when I've been with Topfree women, say in Rochester. They're kind of empowered, and the only reactions I've really noticed are occasional thumbs up signs with people passing by. But it's almost like I think people do notice them and pretend not to. But I haven't seen any like leering or negative comments or that kind of thing in my experience. But I suppose it depends on the location and time and things like that.
So for about 30 years now, you've been fighting for naturist rights, but that doesn't pay the bills, at least not until you maybe end up owning a naturist park. So what did you do? How did you support yourself for all those years?
Well, I was a teacher and school administrator in Rochester, New York, till I retired about 13 years ago.
You weren't worried about your career?
No. It didn't have anything to do with, I think that's another popular misconception, that people are going to get fired from their jobs because they're naturists. The recent polls, for instance, the most recent one in 2006, there's a Roper poll that Naturist Education Foundation had done. 74% of the people in the United States think it's perfectly okay to be skinny dipping or nude, socially nude in appropriate places. 50% think the government should actually set up such places, and 25% have been skinny dipping in mixed company themselves and admitted to it, and that's more people that have been bowling. So it's something that is generally accepted. I don't know people who lost their jobs over it, although people think they will. I don't know people who've lost any friends over it. People think they will. And I think sometimes we're our own worst enemies by trying to hide the fact instead of being completely open. When I worked for the city school district, when I worked at central office downtown, and I was doing a press conference on nudity, or on peace activities, because I was very active in anti-war activities as well. Their only requirement was that I step a few feet away from the front of the building so I didn't have the city school district office in the background if I was doing an interview. But they had no objection to me doing it, and occasionally, I could think one time where I was on the same newscast twice, one talking about city school district affairs, because I was in charge of student placement, putting kids in magnet schools, desegregation, and so on. And on the same night, I was on some kind of naturist topic. And there's no problem. I never had any problem. Occasionally, I'd get a call at work asking about naturist things, and I'd give them my home number and say, "But I can't talk now, but please call me at home after work." But I know I never had any negative things. In fact, during the Topfree activity in 1986, I was on the Phil Donahue show, which was a wonderful talk show, better than most of them today. And I was on during the week before school started, when teachers have all their in-service. They come in for in-service before the kids come. And pretty much the whole school district stopped to watch me on Donahue for that hour. It certainly isn't anything. I think, and that's true not just in naturist things, but in most things, we manifest acceptance or we manifest problems. And if we are completely open and know what we're and are proud of what we're doing, it's not going to cause a problem. If we are hide, it is. I mean, I hike nude in national forests and things, and in the woods, and And I've met rangers, and I say, hi, nice day, and walk on. Well, if I went and quickly tried to throw clothes on and hid behind a tree, they'd think something was wrong or I was doing to hide, and I might be hassled. So, I've done that even where it was against the law. And I'm not run into problems if I'm in a remote area, because most of the rangers are probably skinny dippers themselves. And I would guess the same thing is true anywhere. I don't think that's a United States phenomenon. I think that's probably true in Canada as well. If you get what you expect, and if you expect to be that you're doing something you're proud of and talk to your friends and neighbors and family about it, there's not going to be a problem. And they may be curious. They might even disapprove, but you're not going to lose friends over it. And but there's a good chance they'll be curious and ask more about it. I know a lot of people who thought, oh, I could not tell my parents, I could not tell this person or that person. Well, when they do, there's no problem, even though they thought there would be. So that's one of the things I feel very strongly about, is that people really need to be open with everyone. Instead of just, I'm going camping on the weekend, I say, I'm going to Bear Oaks for the weekend. I'm going to Bear Oaks at the nudist park. You want to come along?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because I've always said to people that, I've been telling people forever, and I've never had anybody think that anything bad about it. It's not for them. They could never do it. They don't, there's all kinds of things. Now, maybe they're too polite. I don't know. But I've never had anybody say, oh, you're a pervert or anything, because I say it with pride, and I say it without...
Because they know you already. They know who you are. They're not going to...
They know I'm a reasonable guy.
They're not going to change their opinion of you suddenly because you like to skinny dip or be nude.
But if people find out after knowing you for 10 years that all this time you've been secretly going to a naturist park, they're going to suspect something's wrong. And I think that's the mistake people make.
And that's one of the big... and another thing I feel very strongly about is when you're raising children... I never told my children, don't tell anyone, or anything like that, because then I don't want children to think there's something wrong with it. I think children need to grow up feeling comfortable with their bodies and with themselves, and there's no better way to do that than in a naturist situation where they can see the wide diversity of people and how people change with age and all of that, which many children don't have a clue about. So it's really important growing up for people to see that, and for kids to not get the message that there's something to hide, that there's something wrong. So I recommend to parents, and I run workshops on this at festivals and things, that any parent who has someone who's in a nursery school, in a preschool, or in primary school, first, second, or third grade, that you before your child goes into class, let the teacher know, let the principal of the school know, the school counselor, that you're naturist. And when the teacher asks the kids what they did this weekend, they may say they went to nudist park or draw pictures of nude people, and that's okay. And then there won't be a problem if the school is forewarned. But I'd rather do that than tell the kids don't do it.
So now, many years later, you've made the ultimate commitment, I guess, and you've bought into a naturist park, Sunsport Gardens. How did that happen?
Well, I've been going to nudist parks since 1969. I think I've been to 60 or 70 different ones, and my favorite had been Sunsport Gardens, although I saw some problems with it, but it was really the ideal climate year-round. It's in the area of Florida that's 10 degrees warmer in winter than the Tampa and Orlando area, and 10 degrees cooler in summer than the Tampa and Orlando area. Very nice year-round. And it had a very relaxed atmosphere. They never discriminated. They never had quotas for single men or anything like that. It opened in just a relaxed, very natural place without a lot of concrete. With a philosophy of keeping it natural. Well, the man who'd founded it, Hugo Forster, died in 2001. I put together some people, and we bid on it and won and bought it then. And and it's something I kind of wanted to do, and although I hadn't really thought seriously about it until the occasion arose in 2001. And at that time, we made some changes. It's kind of nice to be in a position where you could have your values actually come to life. We cut out smoking in the buildings, and now, by the way, Sunsport's, in the last few months, Sunsport's 100% smoke-free except for designated smoking areas. So the whole place is smoke-free now. We started offering healthy food in the restaurant. We eliminated some serving of alcohol that was being done illegally. And we intentionally don't have a bar because that kind of changes the atmosphere of a club. So it's very family-oriented and very much in naturist values as I see them. We're ecologically sensitive. Our swimming pool and hot tub and showers the primary heat is solar. And we add salt and we ozonate to our pool to cut down on need for chlorine, and we ozonate it as well, which is a environmentally sound way to do it, and recycle and all that kind. So we're ecologically sensitive. We leave the grass long around our ponds so that birds can nest, and otters. So we keep it natural. We don't have any activities going on that are not appropriate for children. We have healthy food in the restaurant and a healthy environment throughout the place, and those are kind of values that are naturist values, I think, or at least kind of values shared by my mentor, who was Lee Baxendall, who was founder of Nature Society, who meant a lot to me. And so we actually are living those values and have a club that stresses ecology, stresses being natural, stresses offering healthful alternatives, and is very family-friendly. In fact, we run a children's camp every summer in July, where we have kids from all over flying in, because it's a very unique children's camp stressing having fun and body acceptance and so on.
So now that you're a Naturist club owner, of course, you're fabulously wealthy and raking in the big bucks.
No. There's nothing. I don't make any money on it. I don't get any dividends. I don't get any pay. I pay for my lot the same as everybody else pays for their lots. I don't make one penny on it. I just am being able to live in a wonderful place and a lifestyle I love, and having an influence on the values and the way the club's operated. But no, we don't. I don't make one penny on it. I'm living on retirement income and things.
Well, I mean, I was kind of joking with you because
I know, because people think they can make money on nudist parks, but no one does, unless some people try by putting in bars and doing real estate. The only way clubs have really made money is by selling real estate and by promoting a lot of drinking. And even those get in trouble.
Yeah, well, I'm not. My objective is, and I was interviewing Ted Hadley over at Cypress Cove, and I was saying, we should not apologize for making money. And my objective is to become profitable. Even considering the investment that had to be made to purchase the land at Bear Oaks, because if we can't do that, then we'll never have the growth of naturism. And I want to prove that you can do that without having the bars.
Well, I think you can, Stéphane. I think you're right. I think you can. I personally am not making any money because that's my choice. But Sunsport does not have a lot of debt. The only debt are loans from me. And we're able to make improvements. We just put in a new hot tub. We just resurfaced our tennis courts. We keep the place in very good shape, and we make enough money to do that. We're not in any financial difficulty, and I suppose I could make a small amount of money on it if I wanted to, but our objective is a little, I agree with Ted Hadley and that it's nice to have it a money-making thing, and Sunsport it does make money, and we make enough to pay all our taxes, and without any problem, we make enough to improve and keep making improvements without any problem, and we do it without borrowing money or going into debt.
What do you believe you've used the words nudist and naturist interchangeably, and I think that's because you realize that's more of a cultural term. Europe saying naturists and Americans saying nudists. But what do you think, what is it for you? What does it mean to be a naturist? What values do you want to see in a naturist club?
Well, I've kind of talked about that already, but I actually, when I'm being careful with my words, I kind of think of naturist as nudist with more. Nudists can, take off your clothes, but for me, that term naturist implies being close to nature, being part of, feeling part of nature, and having it integral, which would be ecology. And when I say nudity with more, I mean things like ecology, healthful living, being family friendly, diversity and not without discrimination against people. And those are the kind of things that, at least the way I use naturist when I'm being careful, those are the kinds of things that I would throw in to that term of naturism.
And my big crusade has become, not intentionally, but because it's caused so much reaction, my opinion is that clothing optional has been a failure in terms of naturism, in terms of getting more acceptance. But what do you think?
Well, I agree with you. I think we're... Well, I have mixed feelings. Clothing optional beaches are wonderful. And so sometimes there's a word for that. You're certainly going to sell the term better to government authorities talking about a beach being clothing optional rather than being nudity required. I think so. There's certainly political things there, but I want my club. We use the term naturist. We do not use clothing optional because we require people to be nude around the pool and hot tub and sauna in that area all the time. We encourage people to be nude other places as well. And so we do not want people coming and staring. We want people to come and participate. So we use the term naturist, not clothing optional. We've had a lot of discussion about that, and you can't require in a club people to be nude 100% of the time on the whole grounds, I don't think, because people get dressed to go to work, and sometimes the weather's cooler, and for one reason or another, they're working on something that could be dangerous if you're not going to have protection. But I think you saying nudity is expected all over, and you can require nudity in certain areas where it's not an option at all. And at least that's how I've gone with it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the big challenge I had is, I can't say that nudity is obligatory because it isn't always. I don't want to say it's optional, meaning that if you don't feel like it, for whatever reason, and there's a million reasons people tell you, you can just stay dressed and watch everybody else. And
that's exactly where I am. We're exactly at the same point with that, and that's why you and I use the term naturist and not clothing optional. I think it's more honest, and that's what we ought to say, although in fact there are areas of the clubs and there are times when people wear clothing. I know our summer camp we run for children, both the counselors and the kids, it's nude all 8 days of the camp, 100% of the time. It's in July, so there's no problem with being cold ever. And it's required, complete nudity, children, counselors, everybody. Anybody else around, no matter where they are on the grounds. And that helps a lot, too, because that they get comfortable with that real quickly. I think it's I think it is important. I think we're, as you say, I think we're very similar, same philosophy, and one other thing I wanted to say is that I think you have no problem with this either. People complain a lot about getting young adults into clubs, and they don't come. Well, I think that's mostly because clubs are not really accepting of them, no matter what they say. But we have no problem. We have lots of young people living at Sunsport. Our ground fees are only $6 for anyone under 30 who's a member of the Naturist Society or Florida Young Naturists or as a student. And in fact, in early August, we had about 150 young people ages 18 to 30 who had come for a bash. They call it a bash, but it's kind of like a well-behaved party. And that was the fourth one we've posted. And so we get lots of young people living there and living at Sunsport and visiting. And it all has to do with the attitude of letting them stay up at night and not closing everything down at 11 o'clock or midnight, because their hours are different. Their natural time clocks are different, and charging rates that they can afford, and having all the facilities open to children. We even in our swimming pool, even if kids know how to swim, they probably swim better than their parents, and we don't require their parents with them as long as the parents say it's okay. So we're open for young people and children all over the whole place.
Well, that's it once again for this episode of the Naturist Living Show. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening, as always. This was episode number 22, and I'm very happy to announce that we've had over 70,000 downloads of the show. That means the show has been listened to over 70,000 times. Those aren't just hits or page views. Those are full downloads of episodes. So I thank you for your interest. I thank you for listening. This was episode 22, but all the other episodes are always available. And as I watch the stats, I see that people are always catching up and listening to the old shows. And that's great, because unlike radio, these shows are available forever. So if you are interested, you can find everything, past episodes and show notes at the website, which is at naturistliving.bareoaks.ca. That's CA for Canada, because we are in Canada. Also, please keep sending in your comments and suggestions. I do appreciate getting them, and they certainly give me ideas for shows, and it certainly keeps me going. It is the reason that I do this show, because of you, our listeners, that enjoy the show and tell me and encourage me to keep doing it. So thank you for that. So if you want to send us emails, the show's email address is naturistliving@bareoaks.ca. That's BARE, of course, bareoaks.ca. So join us again in about a month for the next episode of the Naturist Living Show.
This episode of the Naturist Living Show was brought to you by Bare Oaks Family Naturist Park. Traditional naturist values in a modern setting. Traditional values means that naturism is more than just taking your clothes off. It is a life philosophy with physical, psychological, environmental, social, and moral benefits. Bare Oaks Family Naturist Park strives to promote those naturist values in a modern setting that provides the amenities and services that our members and visitors expect. Free your body, free your mind. Learn more at www.bareoaks.ca.